What was it?
All right, we should be live. So I think we had some weather issues here that was causing my last stream to be bad. I think it actually damaged some of the equipment here. I
That explains it.
yeah. So because after the storm passed and the weather was nice, things still weren't quite acting right. So
Okay, so they fixed
it
the
was
equipment.
a bad switch. Yeah.
Mm.
So those of you that are hanging out in the YouTube chat, give me a yay or a nay on the audio. Can you hear my audio? And can you hear the guest audio? Because my audio is on a different stream than theirs. So you guys say good morning, good afternoon, good evening,
Hi.
wherever.
How's everyone doing? How are you guys? Nice hanging
Yeah,
out here.
doing great so far. All right, let's see.
Face reveal.
Yeah. Yeah, Jitsi is great as far as, I mean, you've got the desktop client, you've got the browser client, and you've got the mobile client.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yay for the audio. You got a Gamer King, Mr. Best Beatles fan says yay. Testing says yay, dash capital S, lowercase y-u. Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, SYU. Yay, SYU.
I don't often update my AUR packages, though, because I've got a few installed, and some of them do compile. So it's one of those things I almost never even bother with the AUR helper and doing updates.
I don't.
Like
The way
three times a year, I'll update my AUR packages, maybe.
The way I do it is, if I like a package, I just package it up and put it on my own repo and update that way. I don't update the AUR because it takes too long to build and install.
That might be something I start doing more of too. Is the ones that take too long to compile, I just start making my own binaries. And
when I ran Arch, I basically had a build server that automated everything.
Yeah.
As soon
There you
as
go.
update was available on AUR, it pulled the package file and build it on a separate server and put it on a repo that I set up for myself.
Well, isn't there an Arch repo, an unofficial one that is basically binary builds of the AUR?
The chaotic repo.
Yeah.
Well,
I've never actually used it myself. I just know a lot of people that use Arch.
Speaking of
tend to use it.
Speaking of which, I would. It's an idea being cooked right now. Something called the ACR, the Arch Linux Community Repository, made for all custom distros to use. Instead of each distro having their own separate repository with AUR packages, it's going to be one single humongous repository for all the community of custom distros.
Because one thing about the AUR, they're really picky about what can be there. Like Manjaro can't package stuff up and put it in the AUR if it's Manjaro specific, right? Yeah. Like they can Arco and Endeavor, they don't want all that stuff there. So you've got all of these Arch-based distros. There's 100 of them out there. They all have to maintain their own repository of software rather than just using the AUR.
They have
which
a bit of
I can
a different
understand.
problem there as well. So they do not want to use scripts at the end of the installation process. At least that's not recommended by Calamaris. So they have to package it up and put it in some sort of a proper binary repository.
Yeah, that's why the ACR is going to come into existence. The idea was proposed by one of the maintainers of the chaotic repository. It's so we as maintainers of custom Arch distros, instead of using our own repositories for AUR packages, we maintain the packages we want on that one repository for all. Like Endeavor, Arco, and everybody will be using it. We will only have repositories for our own distro-specific packages.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think
it's bringing the community as a whole to unite in a way.
Yeah, and
there's too
everybody's
many
still
people
allowed
doing the.
to cook their
Yeah,
own soup. Sorry.
Yeah,
So it won't matter. I think it's good. It's a good way to unify this because I always have this mess when going with Arco and getting software that works actually better from Arco, which is just another AUR spin-off that's actually not the Archway in
Yeah.
some way. I do like the idea of Stefanos that he proposed. I never heard of it though. I gotta support it. I'm in some way. I like that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's mainly for AUR packages, not distro specific. Like if
Okay.
we have our own settings, for example,
Yeah.
we keep them on our own repositories. But anything that comes from the AUR, like DaVinci Resolve and
Yeah.
stuff like that, it's only on that single repository. It's a work in progress. We're still looking for maintainers, but it will come to fruition at some point because we cannot keep each one packaging our own set of AUR packages and putting them on our repo. Like I just ran into an issue where I got kicked off of a Git repo called I think Codeberg in Germany. They kicked me out because my packages were occupying around 30 gigs.
Yep.
They were like, no. We rely on donations. We don't do hosting of packages. So I had to rebuild my distro, and now with all the people that had my distro installed, ran into a repository not found issue. So I had to find a fix for that. So it's a headache. So by having a single repository for all custom distros is a better idea. It's a better way of doing things.
Well, I know that's a Git Git hosting service, not a package, not a
Right.
not a how to say this correctly, not an object store.
Yeah.
So logically,
Yeah,
they have all the right to kick you since you by definition are using it for other purposes.
yes, correct. I didn't blame them. I understood them. I didn't say anything against them. It was a bit on a tight spot. I just joined them and I pushed a new update to my distro with this repository hosted by them, and then they kicked me out after a week. It was a bit tight for me, so I had to quickly find a solution. And you learn how to be quick on your toes when you've been doing this for so long.
Yeah, if you have problems with some of these Git hosts, as far as the size and the bandwidth you're taking up, you could always just spin up your own GitLab server or Git server or one of the, just
better solution for that is just use a proper object store and part with
Exactly.
$5 a month. Go with S3 or Azure Blob Service or whatever the hell Google has on.
what Google I don't know what
DigitalOcean or
Linode has some cloud storage.
They have a separate cloud store, object store, and those work basically they're basically for that, for public sharing of files on scale.
The way I did it while I'm waiting for the ACR to come to fruition is I just put all my packages on my shared host that's hosting my website as regular files, not as Git, because I'm not paying for a VPS. So it's working, and in 1 month, since I have unlimited bandwidth on my account, in 1 month I used up 3 terabytes. So, and they're okay. As long as they're okay with that, they're not going to stop me. I asked them first. I asked them, are you okay with hosting files? They were all,
if you've got that much being transferred, then you probably need to be on S3 because that's a lot, and it's going to grow bigger. As your distro gets bigger, you're going to have more users. Yeah, you're going to have to scale up at some point.
Yeah, I will scale up, but if the ACR comes to fruition, I wouldn't need to, because it's going to all be hosted by the Chaotic team, which they have humongous servers, and they are the back end. They have a huge back end, so I'll be okay. It's just a temporary solution until the ACR comes to fruition. It's not something for forever. But I don't because I am not a server admin. I don't know how to use I tried to use the Amazon WS, whatever it's called, AWS.
Mhm.
I didn't understand a thing about it, so I got lost.
The documentation for all of the Amazon stuff is they try to speak over your head a lot of times.
Yeah.
Seems like when you're reading this stuff, it is complicated. I'm not
Yes,
gonna lie.
not only that, even DigitalOcean. I tried many. I couldn't understand it. I'm not a server admin. It's not my area of expertise. So I used my own shared host for the time being. As long as the ACR is still working, they're still working on it. I'm like, okay, temporary solution until it comes to fruition. If it doesn't come to fruition, I'll have to scale up a different way. But so far it's positive. A lot of people are joining, and it's still it's started. They're making, and it's all automated. Like BigPod said, it's all automated. Even PKG builds that are corrupt or failed or bad configuration files, there's a bot that will correct the issue.
That's not actually that hard to do. I
I'm not
mean,
saying it's hard. I'm not saying it's hard. I'm just saying that there is someone who knows and who does this for a living, who will be taking care of that. So all we have to do is report the issues, and he will send it to the bot, who will fix, and done.
Well, that's what we need more of is we need more package maintainers that do it for a living, like you said, because that's something that almost no distro has is somebody like that's their job to
only paid distros really do that.
I mean
Think,
corporate distros, right? So
think Ubuntu, Red Hat, SUSE. That's where
SUSE.
it ends.
Yeah, well, chaotic. They have been doing it for so long. They felt like, yeah, we can create the community, a community repository, because we've been doing it so long. We have the knowledge, we have the equipment, we have the power, the server power. Yeah, I'm in until further notice. I'm in. I'll maintain the package. I know how to maintain PKG builds. Detect if a package is, let's say, reported as out of date, like TeamViewer recently, it was reported out of date. We updated it before the AUR package maintainer did.
Oh, I've done that with many AUR packages where I've gone to the AUR to try to install something and it's broken. So I have to edit the package build myself to actually fix the thing.
Well,
Yeah.
many AUR packages are at the end of the day binaries, just plopped from a tar file onto the file system. Those are
good
easy
luck.
to maintain.
Good luck
The
building.
AUR packages are many AUR packages never see updates. Like you can tell that whoever put that thing just plopped it on the AUR and forgot about it. And some of those things can go years without anybody ever reviewing those package builds. And
Speaking of which, recently on XFCE, the Thunar Shares plugin that is on the AUR hasn't been updated since 2020.
yeah, that's not unusual. Again, with AUR, I found AUR packages that are like 15 years old, like the last time it was updated.
Yeah, but who fixed it? The Manjaro team fixed it.
Of course.
So
there's a reason I wrote many of the packages that are an AOR. I wrote for my own system by myself. Well, there are two reasons. I wanted to learn, and I wanted to have them actually properly working. And I made them in such a way that it's fully automated. It really doesn't care what even updates it does automatically, but all through basically a GitLab pipeline, CI/CD pipeline.
And GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions I just discovered recently. I can build my ISO once every week and keep it up to date that way instead of having to manually build it myself.
Yeah, you've just got a weekly ISO that automatically builds.
Yeah, but
GitHub with GitHub Actions, or if you're doing GitLab, you have GitLab CI/CD, which is in my opinion better, but they're both quite good.
Yeah, but my problem is my ISO is bigger than 2 GBs, so GitHub will not host it. To be
Yeah.
able to, it always fails. I have to. It gives me a sort of a package that I can convert into an ISO
Yeah.
myself that I have to upload manually to SourceForge, because GitHub does not allow anything bigger than 2 gigs.
I recommend you to use your own build agent.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking right now. I'm doing some
Then
research.
use your own build agent, which is I think easy to install, and it then automatically does everything, sets up. It will build on your own machine, whichever one you choose, through their system, and then you can either place it in a directory and then do it yourself, or if SourceForge has ability to automate like through curl or something like that,
It
you can do
does. It does.
you can do that without a
Yeah.
problem.
There is a big problem though. I am from Lebanon and we don't have power 24/7. We only have power 20% of the day.
Well,
Nah.
you could
Yeah.
use your VPS for that.
Yeah, I'm looking into VPSs right now
Yeah.
because I can't do it on my own. Like the power just came back and I just turned on my PCs and I remembered DT's live stream.
And by the way, the chat was asking, introduce yourself and let them know about your distribution, because you actually mentioned the name. So some of the YouTube chat is wondering.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, um, my name is Steve. I go by Steve, but my real name is Stefan. And Stefanos from Greece, and I created Zero Linux. If you're looking for it, it's zerolinux.xyz.
Yeah. And I will post a link.
And DT just made a video not long ago about it, so you can check it on his channel.
Let's see if I can post that in the YouTube chat.
Where can I contribute to the ACR and help with it? Where could I find the work online?
Not yet. It's not yet online. Currently, it's just a private Telegram group for now.
Okay.
We're just developers, maintainers on there, working on the ideas and contributing what ideas we can before we going public. We will be sharing a public Telegram channel where people can contribute later on.
And I'm sure if it catches on, which I'm sure it will, all of these Arch-based distributions are going to start adding that repository like immediately. So everybody that uses Arch is gonna know this thing exists as soon as it's live, probably.
Yeah, it's gonna solve a lot of issues.
Yeah,
that's the best idea I heard in the Arch community for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's the best idea I've heard, except for the DUR, D-U-R, the Debian user repository, which somebody was trying to create a AUR for Debian a while back. And then somebody was also doing the same thing for Ubuntu. It was the Packstall
isn't
guy,
that
the kid that did the...
isn't that the same thing for Fedora?
Is Fedora also doing something similar?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Fedora has their Copper repository.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they have the Copper. Yeah.
Yep.
COPR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a quite a project.
Yeah, maintaining so many AUR packages is quite a nightmare, though. I'm doing it. I've been doing it for a couple of months now, and it's a nightmare.
Well, I can relate. Just the few packages that I keep around in the AUR, and like I think I told you guys on the last one, or maybe the chat before that. Like, if you see a package maintainer, give them a hug, because those guys, they deserve it. Next time you're at a conference and somebody mentions,
I can tell you that, and I just work once every so often with Mate packages. Now the thing that you have to do that a lot more with AOR packages and RHoof.
By the way, DT, you ever heard of Nala?
I haven't tried it.
It's amazing. Tech Hut made a video recently about it, and for people who use Debian, it's amazing. I wish Arch would make something like that. It looks a lot like the Fedora DNF package manager, but way better.
I was
way
about to say DNF is not my favorite, but okay.
but way better. This one is
Yeah.
like, for example, when you're installing multiple packages, instead of scrolling endlessly in the terminal, it has its own window, and it scrolls within that limited area.
Okay.
It's really clean and well done. I wish they do the same for Arch.
I'm sure you could probably do something like that if you had some skills with scripting.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm still
I get-
finishing
I-
up Bash.
Yeah. I'm trying to think how you would get that in a single window mode without using some complicated libraries like incurses or something.
Yeah, and speaking of in curses, I don't know if you ever heard of an Arco spinoff called Hefter Linux.
Yeah, I've heard.
I noticed they have a lot of Haskell and stuff inbuilt into the distro. Now it's a dead distro right now, but I still have it installed on my Nextcloud system. I stripped it out of all Arco packages, Arco repositories, Hefter repositories and packages. It's only Arch, pure Arch now.
If it has some Haskell installed, then chances are they needed probably Pandoc installed for some reason. That's usually like if you've got any Haskell on your system, usually Pandoc is the program like everybody has. Or shell check if you're big into scripting. Sometimes shell check is installed on some distros.
Yeah, they were attempting to create a studio version, a spin-off of the Ubuntu Studio using Arch, but that was a fail. I was part of the Hefter team for a while, the beta tester team. They started the idea, but they completely closed down before they released it. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, Linux I've learned so much in 1 year. And
Linux is awesome. I mean,
I haven't spun up Windows in months.
Oh,
I don't need it.
I'm actually running Windows right now.
I haven't sat down at a computer that was running Windows in so long. I can't even remember.
My laptop would explode.
I keep a VM of Windows around to laugh at sometimes.
I don't even keep a VM. I have a dual boot system with Zero Linux, but I only boot it to update the drivers and Windows itself once every 3-4 months, and then I immediately switch back to Linux. I feel I'm missing something when I go to Windows.
Well, currently I kind of have to use Windows because otherwise my laptop would practically explode if I tried using Linux. Because
how old is that thing?
Well, it's 4 years old, but the cooling system is absolutely trashed, and I'm just waiting a bit longer to buy myself a new system. But because of how trashed cooling system is, Windows does a better job of managing thermals than Linux. So
due to drivers,
for those reasons, I'm running Windows. So
that's always been one of the things that holds us back as far as Windows versus Linux is power consumption, battery life. For some reason, Linux just doesn't even compete with Windows.
On my laptop,
for that,
I have to run. The problem is I have to run since I have an NVIDIA GPU. If I want to have a second monitor connected, I need to have that GPU running. And on Windows, I can make it just do the things required to just send out the signal. On Linux, it's technically possible, but I'm not gonna pay myself when it's that much easier to just boot Windows.
This is the thing.
Basically the same things.
This is the thing with Linux these days. It's most people are using laptops, and especially with Arch, there's a lot of things missing, and that's what is mostly deterring people from switching to Linux.
Well, on desktops, desktop now.
Yeah, on desktops it's a different story, but on laptops, especially laptops with dual graphics,
it's still an issue.
Well,
it's getting there, but
my work laptop runs Linux great, and it has only Linux on it. But it has only one graphics card, so that's Intel.
Well,
Yeah, but
iGPU.
these things.
You're safe right there. You
Yeah.
don't need a driver. It runs off of the
Yeah.
kernel immediately.
That's why I was very, very, very particular in choosing a laptop that only has Intel iGPU.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
like recently, I decided to remove Intel driver completely from my distro because the kernel driver does better than the Intel one.
yeah. And
Yeah,
So
these days, talking about graphics cards too, having one computer that's got AMD GPU and one that's got an NVIDIA GPU, it's
Or
so
both.
nice. It's so nice having open source drivers. Like
well, it's not-
NVIDIA just tends to break all the time. Every time I do an update on the system, there's driver problems and kernel panics. Well, it's not
haven't
every
had
time, but
driver problems with NVIDIA in a while.
yeah.
same
And
here.
my next system will definitely have NVIDIA because they're definitely.
If you can find one.
Well, I can get one for quite a nice amount of money, and probably the reason I want to have NVIDIA is because if I'm gonna do any kind of streaming, any kind of stuff like that,
You need the
I want
NVENC.
NVENC. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna run it on a CPU because then even if I take 5950X, that's gonna take half the CPU still.
Yeah, that is exactly why I stick with NVIDIA. And if you are with a recent NVIDIA, you have no issues. But
Yep.
what I decided to do recently with the upcoming version of Zero Linux is I removed all the NVIDIA drivers and all XF86 video drivers from the ISO itself. I moved them to Calamares, minus the Intel driver, of course. And it worked. It worked because I'm hosting the legacy drivers on my repo thanks to the AUR maintainer Jonathan, who's maintaining them on the AUR. Once I have all the drive under NVIDIA, I have latest 470XX, 390XX, and 340XX for legacy. Once the user, if the user knows he has which legacy GPU he has, he selects the right drivers, and it just works. And booting the ISO with a open source Mesa driver works for a lot of people. I'm not saying everyone. Some people will run with issues that have NVIDIA GPUs that don't like.
NVIDIA GPUs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
NVIDIA.
My
the
GPU
NVIDIA people will have a problem. Yeah.
was having problems with Nuevo for a while. I actually couldn't
I mean, that's why
run it at all.
Manjaro has the choice when you
Yeah.
boot to boot with the open source driver or the proprietary. Because some cards, if you got an NVIDIA card, you better boot with the proprietary driver.
Yeah, but the problem with Manjaro's proprietary driver, it's the latest one.
Yeah.
So if you have a legacy one, a legacy GPU, it won't boot.
Yeah.
So to bypass that issue, I enabled Mesa on the ISO. So Mesa already includes a version of Nouveau that works for 90% of the legacy cards.
Yeah, on legacy it works. On newer ones, I have 1050 Ti mobile. That one was for up until about a year ago a giant pain.
Yes, but if you use a separate XF86 Nouveau driver, that will not work. Only the Mesa would work. That's why I opted to remove the XF86 Nouveau from the ISO, leaving Mesa. That way, it will boot. You will have no issues. I have testers on my group. So far, all success. All success. So now that's how I'm going to release the next version of Zero Linux with all the video drivers moved to Calamares. It's up to the user to select the correct one.
Is somebody typing on a keyboard? Hold on.
No,
Got some,
no, I think
there was some strange noise. Yeah, it sounded like somebody.
He's moving. He's moving. His microphone is rubbing.
It's me.
His...
It's me. Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. It was probably your zipper, probably, because it sounded like it was like a. It's like somebody is really hacking away right now while they're chatting.
Well, now that I'm.
I hope your viewers. I hope your viewers don't mind me smoking on stream.
No, I doubt anybody will care.
I used Linux for 10 years and was using Crossover to be able to play World of Warcraft. And I was doing fine until Ubuntu had a release that was not playing nice with crossover at all. And so I had to switch back to Windows, and I got physically ill when I bought a Windows CD.
Yeah.
And now the problem I'm having is, and I sent a message to DT, is I couldn't get any distro to install properly on my desktop. And I
That's
thought it
strange.
was the TPM 2.0 enable, but I
No,
tested that and it's not. I think my next option is to start unplugging USBs because I got my USB loaded and go from there. But I
possibly.
have got MX Linux installed before, but the problem I had was I use TVs as my screen. That's why I'm kicked back. I got a 65 inch and a 47 inch, and the centering of the image was wrong, and also it would constantly put the primary on the left hand screen, which I didn't want it on, and I even disconnected the HDMI from the graphics card, and it still put it on the left hand screen. It wasn't even there. I plugged the HDMI back in, and there it was.
That's X issue need to set up correctly. That's
Yeah.
It's a common issue. It's a
Yeah.
common issue with Arch Linux. It's especially KDE and its spin-off Qt stuff. I suffer from the same issue. Like when I boot my Zero Linux, when I boot it on my system, I have 3 monitors. It always puts the primary monitor to the leftmost monitor. Always.
I have the same problem. My 3 monitors are actually in reverse order, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how I plug them into the various ports on the
matter.
card.
That won't matter.
That won't matter.
So what I have to do is I go into ARender, which is the GUI front end to XRender,
Yeah.
and you can rearrange the order of the monitors, and there's a little check button. And when you do the check button, it saves a little bash script that runs
And
the
run
proper
that bash
XRender
script
command.
start.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
on
that's what I do.
KDE, I said it once and it keeps remembering it always.
Yeah, that's also an option.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a story with monitors and all that, and X, and I've been, since I have a work laptop that has Intel GPU only, I have been trying to run Wayland on it,
Ay, ay, ay.
and let's just say, sorry Google, sorry audience, but it's a clusterfuck.
It is.
I don't have another word to say. I cannot make it nicer. It's a clusterfuck. That's the only reason I keep trying is because laptop's monitor is a touchscreen, and X, if I wanna basically turn it vertical, X just doesn't care. It will keep it on.
Yeah.
That then I can make it work, but it's a
So
pain.
this is another one of those still sticky issues. If you do monitors in different positions, like one landscape, one portrait, it's still something that's... Luckily, I don't have to fight with that, but I hear from viewers of the channel all the time that have one monitor that they want to turn, the opposite way and rotate 90 degrees. And how do I do it? I can't do it reliably, or it'll work one time, but when I reboot, it didn't work the next.
So I'm, for most of the time on this laptop, I'm running Wayland because all the time I'm using the touchscreen. If I read something, I will just put it into vertical, so it has more vertical space and it's easier to read. But if I want to do anything recording wise, Zoom or anything in that sort, I have
You're running Ubuntu Mate for that?
No, I'm running Kubuntu.
Okay.
I have to log out, switch to X version of KDE Plasma, and then I can do Zoom or OBS or anything like that.
Anything related to video, basically, on Wayland is still
it's not ready
touch
yet.
and go. Yeah, touch and go.
I cannot mention much because I know a bit too much, but basically, only way OBS actually has capability to record on Wayland is because somebody from Wayland team took enough time to actually get it to work. Because otherwise, OBS team basically almost went, we won't do it, because it was so complex and so basically messed up, because Wayland team wants to make it their own way, which is so far different from X, but in the same time so close to X that it's
Yeah, but the Wayland team
horrible.
also has to. The Wayland team has to realize one of the big things that's holding a lot of people back is being able to record your desktop,
Yeah.
and they should be working with OBS.
Problem is
Like that. That's a big deal. If they can get OBS working, like that solves so many issues.
technically it works. Problem is the way Wayland does things. They have they went and decided to Wayland to do just the bare minimum. There will be no APIs, no systems like that. So every program that wants to record needs to implement everything regarding recording, screencasting, and all that based on very bare primitives that Wayland exposes, which is a problem and is a giant problem. For example, X exposes a whole API, makes a screencast or screen recording API. That's not what Wayland does. Wayland just exposes primitives through XDG portals, and now you have to implement an API that you can use to record that screen. And that's a giant pain in the ass.
Yes, it is, because as a distro maintainer, I've been requested multiple times to include a Wayland session into my distro. I included it, but Electron apps refuse to work. So why the hell did I include it? Well, because it was requested. I'm not gonna refuse the people, but it's up to them to get it to work. For example, they tell me, "Oh, it works on NVIDIA." Yes, it works, but
Technically it does.
Basically not, because you have to hack your way into it, and
Yes.
even if you do, half your apps will not run.
They won't run anywhere. And even if you have an Intel GPU or AMD GPU or NVIDIA GPU, they won't run. And that's a problem.
Exactly. So I don't know. I'm thinking of removing it, but I'm too scared that I will get hate for it.
Yeah.
What? You get hate no matter what you do, right? I mean, that's yeah. You can't worry about that.
It's the first.
You just have to do what makes sense for you. Yeah, I mean that's.
What makes sense is removing Wayland altogether until Wayland is way more stable and
way more
things
ready.
work.
Not gonna happen soon, especially if it remains in the hands of Red Hat. Because
Red Hat is not
Red Hat itself, but people at Red Hat. Those are
people,
many times a problem. Yeah. I heard stories about how arrogant they are. This is the best way I can put it.
Yeah.
I heard stories that they didn't well, in any of their projects, they basically didn't pull in code commits, didn't even look at them. But once someone with an @redhat.com email pushed them or created a pull request, they were automatically pulled in just because of that
there's a lot of email projects associated with Red Hat, at least loosely, even if they're community projects that have this same issue. I mean, it's Wayland is one, GNOME is one, Pulse Audio is one, Systemd is another, right?
X11 is taking kind of stewardship.
Like all of those projects are known for not being the friendliest as far as the people near the top that are actually running the show.
Wayland needs Xorg, doesn't it? It's not independent of Xorg. It's
right now you have to have X.
It is independent. Problem is nothing works with it, so it has a shim which requires Xorg because it is running Xorg under the cover. It's called X Wayland, but technically you don't require it. But 3/4 of the apps won't work.
Yeah, I mean you have to have X right now.
Yeah,
just because. You could
same
use
way, Pipewire technically doesn't require either
Pulse Audio.
Jack or Pulse Audio. Problem is nothing will work then because what it has two shims, one for jack, one for pulse audio, and it
Guys, be sure to
emulates
vote in the poll, by the way.
it
There's a
emulates
poll up.
pulse and jack, and if the emulation if there is no emulation, nothing will work. It's a fun system.
I thought it was C sharp though.
It is C sharp. It is. Let's be clear.
Yeah, you mean other than Python and JavaScript?
Yeah, of
C sharp would
course,
be
of
your
course,
third,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
DT.
What the hell happened?
You know very well I'm not a fan of either of those languages.
Yeah, well, I mean, these days you're so invested in Electron. I mean, I figured it would be all JavaScript all the time with you.
Well,
Well,
Not really.
I've created a Franken monster with Laravel and their mix with npm packages and JavaScript onto this. So on the
Ooh.
web, everything's possible, guys. I'm just
yes,
saying.
it is.
So you have
Especially
all
now
kinds
with
of
WebAssembly.
Frankenstein monsters and whatsoever.
Especially now
I've
with
seen.
WebAssembly, I can
Yeah.
write code in C sharp that can run on your browser. It is compiled through what's it called? I can't remember now. Through a program into WebAssembly, and then it runs in your browser cleanly, basically, or more specifically, your .NET runtime is compiled in WebAssembly, and then my code in C sharp runs on top of that.
Yeah, I had a little project I've been working on. I'm probably going to make a video about it here in the next few days. I was going to create a GTK app, and I asked the community in a community poll, should I do it in Haskell? Should I write it in Haskell? And a lot of people are like, come on, man,
Because
do it in Python. Python's the language. So I was like, you know what? I'll do it in both. And
technically,
that
GTK is
written
only
in C.
properly supported in C.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I could have done it in C too, but it's one of those things.
Wait, no.
You can't satisfy
Actually,
everybody, Big Pod.
Actually, I'm incorrect. They properly support 5 languages. And
C++ and C
C,
and
C++, Python. There's another
Vala, I think.
Vala and another one.
Yeah, because that's one of the elementary guys, I think, use that particular language.
If somebody knows,
Rust might be an official language
I
now.
honestly think it's C sharp, but I don't know. It doesn't go together, but I think it's C sharp. GTK.
You're talking music here? All
No,
I can hear
GTK.
is-
C sharp is a programming language.
C sharp. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's the Microsoft programming language. That's why you've never heard of it.
Oh,
The
yeah,
best
okay.
programming language there is.
Yeah.
Well, there's
Yes.
Genie is officially supported. Java, JavaScript, Kotlin,
There
Perl.
is standard support.
Python, Vala. C,
Yeah.
C++, C sharp is partially supported.
Yeah, it's been,
At GTK sharp, so there's some
Yeah.
partial support there.
that would be correct.
That
But
is-
yeah.
But yeah, so I've been creating this little app, just an example of creating a GTK application. And as I've been playing with it, I'm adding more stuff and learning more stuff. And it just got to the point where I probably spent 30, 40 hours now on these 2 applications that are identical. And you know how hard it is to write something in one language, and then I'm going to recreate it in another.
Yeah.
Let's try to make it the exact same. It's like, that was a nightmare. I should never have done that, but I've already committed to it, and I'm almost done with it now. But I wrote it in Haskell first, and then Python. I'm not that familiar with Python. So that was... But luckily, the Python documentation for this kind of stuff was pretty good, so... I'm one of those people. If I can read a man page, usually I can get stuff done.
I just remembered a story that is 100% true, and it's basically there was a proposal for GNOME 3 and applications that surround GNOME 3 to be written in C sharp instead of whatever they're written now. It
That
was
is a very strange proposal because C sharp
it was
That's a very
actually
weird
it was
proposal.
actually uh, and it was actually considered a proposal. It wasn't
Yeah.
like that nobody was like they were just laughing at the guy. They were actually considering it. Uh, it was proposed
They
by
didn't want to insult the guy. They said
no,
they were considering it, but
no.
come on.
He was he was at the time one of the big names in GNOME, and they were considering it. They couldn't go past the implication of being a Microsoft language. That was it.
Well,
Because there
it's
was
not.
too much backlash by
I
community.
mean, how many people that are like Linux devs that really spend a lot of time programming and working on Linux know any
lot.
C sharp?
A
I
lot.
mean,
Because
not that
many
many.
of those work
Not
for
that many.
companies. A lot of companies use C# internally. Let's be clear. There's a
But I
reason
mean, if you're
C#
talking
is
about
one of
like
the
Red
most
Hat employees know C sharp,
I
because that's
think
what we're
Red
kind of
Hat
talking about
many-
with
I think
GNOME.
some Red Hat employees do, but a lot of Linux people work in Fortune 500 companies. Those companies all use C#.
Well, I mean, there's Linux people at Microsoft,
Yeah.
of course, right? I mean,
We should remember that the ex-CEO of GitHub was C# developer.
yes, he was. I forgot about
Who
that.
was in
Yeah.
GNOME project, and
He worked at Microsoft though before
first he was
he'd been around. Like he was also
around
it's,
before he joined Microsoft. He was
Mhm.
around for many years. He made a couple of companies. One of them surrounding GNOME. He was open source advocate. Then he made a project about C#
Mhm.
with his another GNOME person, Michael De Casa. That's the
Yeah.
guy who proposed C# for
That's right.
GNOME. They made a company called Xamarin. They're making iOS and Android applications in C#. That company was bought by Microsoft. That's how they joined Microsoft. So after many years, they were part of Microsoft. Microsoft bought GitHub, and they put Nat Friedman as a CEO of GitHub. Since he was a known entity in open source, he was a big supporter on open source.
Well, when they introduced him as the CEO of GitHub, I remember, they're basically putting out his resume, and I remember his resume was C# and GNOME. And I thought, well, do you really want to put that on your resume?
Basically, badass in open source. So let's remember that there are quite big enclaves of open source in Microsoft, and a lot of developers whose their job is writing programs for Fortune 500. Those do open source, and many of those write C# or did write C# because C# is one of the most popular programming languages in that kind of a world.
Yeah, Rust is taking over now, though.
Not really.
I have to
Not
partially
really.
agree. There's so much Windows
JavaScript
stuff
is taking over.
in.
Let's be honest, JavaScript
well.
is mostly taking over many of the areas.
Oh, you're kind of right, but I still got to.
Right. Because I know
JavaScript is taking over.
I know the area very well.
I'm waiting for that clearing storm in the internet, back to clear text, and
that won't happen ever.
We should rewrite everything in JavaScript. We need a JavaScript kernel.
Is Perl the forgotten language?
Yes.
Perl is kind of a forgotten language. You see a lot of neckbeards, like the old school Linux, Unix neckbeards that had to learn Perl because that was kind of the scripting language, especially back in the early days. But now everybody, if you're going to do something that requires something more than Bash, you're going to use Python. You're not going to use Perl.
If you're running any kind of a web server, you're going to be most likely writing in JavaScript, even though I hate that. That's how the people do it for some reason. Or nowadays, especially if you're in any way connected to Docker or Kubernetes, you're going to write everything in Go.
Every now and then I'll come across like a Perl script on a GitHub or a GitLab like that's ancient. because nobody
Those are
writes
all
Perl anymore.
ancient,
But
yeah,
but
those
I
are
can't
all
read the
ancient.
thing. Like, have you ever tried to read a Perl script? Like, it is the most
Yes.
confusing language.
Yes.
It is very similar to
I hate it.
if you've ever looking at an awk script. It's very similar syntax to awk,
Yeah.
which is kind of weird to read too.
That's strange because it was easier for me to understand than other languages.
Well,
There's a,
what other languages are you familiar with?
Well, the Java and
Java?
the Java, the absolute bloated piece of crap.
Yeah, Java is absolute piece of shit.
there's a tendency now to use compiled languages as scripts. You can
Yeah.
do that with NIM, which is an alternative to Rust and Go. You can use it with Rust, and Elixir has a nice version of it where you write the code as if it was a script. It will compile it and then
And run it.
hide the compile. And
Yeah.
if you change the source, it will detect that the hash is different than the compiled one. And the first time you run it after you change the source, it will compile it. And I've been using it with Elixir, where you have the equivalent of pip installs in there. So the first time you run it, we'll do all the pip installs for your application and put it in the application. The second time you run it, it doesn't need to do it. So you can go all the way through and have a pretty major application and run it as a script. So I know Rust does that, NIM does that. I'm not sure about Go.
Go does
And
that in some
Yeah,
way.
a lot
Every
of compiled
language does
languages do that now.
Yeah, yay for lowering the developer inner loop. That's all I can say. That's a really good feature because it allows developers to have a lower barrier between debugging their application and writing the code. So
Yes.
normally they had to first write the code, build it, run it, and see if it works. Now they just go, not just that, write code, run code, and see if it works. Or
Elixir-
in some cases, they just go write code, program, runtime automatically detects that there was a change, and rebuilds and reruns code automatically,
Elixir is extremely
lowering the developer inner loop. I like that.
Elixir is extremely easy to do. You just put the equivalent of your pip installs in your bash script and run it. Everything else is hidden on it. And you can put a shebang line at the top, so you can put the script in your path and just run it like any other bash script. So it's really good with Elixir. So.
Man, languages pull those automatically. That's not that complex. All other languages do that.
I've never. I really don't understand why anybody would want to script with a compiled language, to be honest. Unless
a lot of
unless it's
times-
the only language you know. You just like, all I know is C, so let me script with it. Well, surely you can figure out how to write a bash script if you know C.
Well, a lot of time people just default on what they know best, and it's like
Yeah.
easier for them. It's also, for example, I do a lot of things in C#, even though I could do them in Python, Go, Bash, same time. It's just
I guess if
easier
you're
for
not
me.
sharing it too, like I'm thinking of, you're going to put it out there for other people to use. I mean, it would make sense to use a proper scripting language
Yeah.
for
For me,
something
it's
like
just
that.
easier
Yeah.
to just throw together a simple.
Yeah, if it's for your own use, it doesn't matter.
program.cs file.
Or your own shop if you have a corporation and a company.
Yeah.
Your own,
Yeah,
your own
if
users.
everything's just in house. Yeah,
Yeah. But the thing with compiled language, they're more powerful. You can do a lot more. I've got the whole package management system of Elixir in there on all the dependencies. So you can do a lot more, a lot easier with it.
Python has pip for that.
Yeah, I know. It's too, but other languages have other features.
Yeah, but mainly it's for most languages is mainly syntax that you like.
Now, when you build this this binary of this script, does it also has to build some like shared libraries for it to work, or?
Yeah,
Depending on what language you use.
it has the runtime. You need the runtime in there.
Okay.
For example, Go builds a static binary. You just have a binary. It has all the dependencies, including Go runtime inside it.
You can do that with Elixir as well. You can have
Many languages do that now.
have the full runtime in it, or you can create a binary that references the runtime. So you can distribute a binary as well if you want, quite easily.
C# does the same thing. C can do that. including Go, runtime. I think also Rust. Many languages. That's very popular nowadays. That's
Yeah, one of the things that when you learn a new language, you get to appreciate the other languages you know a bit. So I have new appreciation of Python with its.
Every time I learn a language, I learn why I like C# more than anything else. Let's be clear, because
I can understand what Murray's talking about with an appreciation of Python. Every time you go back to it from something else, Python does make so many things much easier.
Yeah. It has
than other things.
real time garbage collection. You have a variable. You say L, the variable L. You say L equals quote NONE. It will unbind the variable and then garbage collected automatically in the background. You can't do that with Elixir, and I don't think with many other languages either. So that's quite good.
has a real-time garbage collection as well.
Yeah, that's good. And the other thing is, you get to appreciate core utils a lot more. They are so lightweight and so fast and so flexible that you can do a heck of a lot in it. There's one application they. I'll just bring it up here. They have Hadoop. It had chess, millions of chess games, and you just wanted to read it and count how many games were won, lost, or drawn. And they did that with Hadoop, and it took 27 minutes. He rewrote it on his desktop using core utils, and it was 235 times faster than running it in Hadoop. So the core utils are extremely powerful and flexible. So I'm going to be using them a lot more.
Well, the GNU core utils, most of them, well, they're all written in C practically, and they are designed for speed. I mean, that's kind of, they're designed to crunch big numbers, really.
Yeah.
That's one thing. A lot of people, I see a lot of people that are learning a programming language will try to rewrite a core util in the new language. Like I'm learning Rust. Let me see if I can rewrite grep in Rust. Well, you can, but it's not going to be as fast.
And also,
it more likely will be.
You think?
Yeah, Rust is better.
You think Rust is faster than C?
Most likely it will have. You know what it will have? Less memory leaks.
Yeah. The other thing
C likes to leak memory, even if you make sure it doesn't leak memory, it will leak memory.
I tell you, Murray, one problem I've had trying to play with Python a little bit this past month is how do you implement something like a sed substitution in Python?
I can't tell you off the top of my head. You want to modify a file in place.
A file, right?
In
exactly.
Place. I don't know how to do it in Python.
Okay.
But I can say something on that. If you want to do it in Bash scripts, like if you sort a file at my file and then redirect it back to my file, it doesn't work because it's streaming. Right? It does it in pieces. It will just null out the file. But if you install Sponge from more utils, you can sort my file, pipe it to Sponge, and then redirect it back to your original file, and that will allow you to do equivalent of updating it in place. But in Python, I haven't tried it. And
what you do is read it into memory.
It creates one chunk.
That's what sed does in the background. It reads it to memory. That was in streaming mode, but I most of the time like to just read the whole file unless it's millions of characters. Then you don't have a choice. Then you probably will want to do something a bit more complex. But just to change a file, it's read it into memory, then do replaces or whatever the hell the command dot replace, and write what you need to replace it. But
well, Matt gave me a suggestion in the chat. Matt in the chat says the library RE, regular expression, I'm assuming is what that is, for dot sub. So I will look at re.sub for Python and see
regular
if that particular.
Yay. I hate regex.
The other thing about core utils in this chess application that they mentioned is that when you use the pipe and things in awk, it takes next to no memory at all. You can run it on as big a file as you want system, and it will still just use the basic memory on it. So that's another feature of the core utils. If you design it properly.
Things like grep said, I mean, those things were written in like the 1970s. Like they should require no memory. They'd had no memory back then.
Yeah,
There
that's
was
why
no
they use
memory to be
streaming
had.
and not reading the file into memory directly.
Might
Yeah.
as well go back to CPM 80.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's streaming the file in pieces. It's not. You didn't have to read the whole file into memory and then use it. So
Yeah, somebody's getting more Python recommendations in the chat. Yeah, OS system, and then I can just run the sed command.
Yeah, that also works.
Okay.
But that spawns a lot of process, and
I don't mind if it's another process as long as it works. I mean, I could always if it's one of those things. I'm doing a substitution of one line in a file somewhere. You know, this is not like it's anything
that's the realization I came to with Elixir. If I can do it in core utils, I'm not going to be shy about using them. I already know the core utils, and they're fast and easy to use. So why not make use of it?
I generally go far away from spawning an external process like that. That's not a good idea
because
it causes a lot of problems. Even it causes a lot of problems, and it's a lot harder for
to debug when things go wrong. You got to
that.
Yeah.
It's a programmer nightmare, basically.
It's the suckless thing, right? You only need one thread, right? Yes.
No, you need a lot of threads. You should use a lot of threads, but do not spawn sub-processes when you don't need them.
Right.
Use threads. Write everything in.
Well, that's actually the Emacs philosophy is everything is single threaded because Emacs is still single threaded.
That's stupid.
It
Use
is.
threads. We have many.
They're working on it though. People have complained enough about it. They decided to eventually become multi-threaded. It's on the timeline.
Elixir, everything is a process. So when you shell out, you're shelling out to a separate process as well.
Yeah.
Well, so if the process crashes, your application's not going to crash.
Well, yeah.
Well,
Separate process is a pain. Always. I don't like everything being a separate process. Be a separate thread if you need to be, and that's it.
Yeah,
these are Elixir processes. They're ultra lightweight. They're not system processes.
Still, it's debugging nightmare.
Yeah, it's hard
to have processes that are separate. They are sub-processes. It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, concurrent applications. But if you're working with an application that requires concurrency, that's the way to go with process.
No, it's threads. You have threads. That's why threads exist.
No.
They're part of the same process. They just literally are separate computational unit for your CPU. You have separate computation.
So if a thread crashes, is your application going to crash?
Most likely, yeah. But
yeah.
if a thread crashes, that means that in concurrent system most likely means there is something wrong in every thread. You should then gracefully crash and recover from that, and then have system that recovers from that crash and do a crash report, and just skirt it away by being a process. That's throwing it away, skirting it away. If you have a crash, you should always see it as a crash of the whole system, whether it be using something like a exception in many Java, C# and other languages like that, or see it as a full-on crash, because that's either error in the code or error in the actual in the data you're running. Automatically, when you have a process, you're automatically, when something crashes, you're automatically skirting away the issue.
But if you have a large real-time system, you have to handle it so that it recovers from that crash in real time.
Yes. Then, if you have a large real-time system, you should probably have concurrent in a system in such a way that that you have 4 different systems running the same thing in a quorum mode. So even if one system crashes, it gets removed, reinstantiated, and does things again.
That's built
Join the quorum.
That's built into Elixir/Erlang. That's its raison d'etre. It has the supervisors that monitor all these processes, and you can say if the process quits, restart it. If a set of processes quit, you can restart the set of them.
Well,
It's all built into the system.
what as far as I know, the most important real-time systems do, they have a single core. Each single core is basically its own world. It even goes so far as to delete the whole environment and reinstantiate it. That's what they do on the very important real-time systems that need to have 100% data reality. So if let's say a solar flare hits one of the cores, that core will get completely instantiated, almost basically to the OS level. That's what they do on rockets. That's what they do on rovers, satellites, and all such systems.
I knew we'd get some rockets.
That's why I know this stuff.
No, it was all going to come back to the rockets.
That's why I know this stuff. That's why
one day, Big Pod
works that way.
Yeah, one day you're going to get that job at SpaceX.
Actually, I can't get a job at SpaceX. For me, it's impossible because of ITAR. And you should know what it is. Basically, it prevents anyone who isn't a U.S. citizen to work for a rocket company or some other companies.
Yeah, well, it's kind of tied into
weapon.
Well, I mean, it's kind of tied into defense, right? So it's I mean, you'd probably have to get security clearance, and you couldn't do that.
To become a U.S. citizen.
You'd have to become a U.S. citizen to
Weird thing just happened right now. I was testing my script for replacing Pulse with Pipewire and vice versa. Replacing Pipewire with Pulse just removed all the panels of KDE. It just killed them. I need to rework that script.
Now it's a clean running system.
Well, because I mean, there's audio widgets and stuff built into KDE. When you install KDE, if Pipewire was already there, you probably would have to, because certain applications probably will use Pipewire as a dependency if it recognized it as already being there. Possibly.
I'm thinking drop that script, and if the user selected one didn't like it, he has to reinstall the system. Because
I don't know.
I don't know. I just uninstall one, it kills the panels, and I'm on an empty desktop.
Yeah, probably there were widgets or something in that panel that depended on Pipewire.
Yeah,
because it was already installed, and then when you uninstall it, it's like, well, Pipewire was a dependency, so now we got to uninstall your panel. Basically, I don't know.
Exactly.
I did that with XFCE4. I removed mousepad, and it deleted half of XFCE.
Yeah, I'm thinking if the user selects Pipewire, doesn't like it, he has to reinstall the system, because audio drivers are once you install an audio driver, there's a lot of things that depend on it.
It's kind of a weird issue. How many people are going to install like a audio server and then uninstall it? And so that's probably why a lot of these applications just assume once Pipewire is there, it'll always be there.
No.
So it's when you uninstall it, it's going to break some things.
No, it's not about that. It's about, I have a user currently I'm trying to troubleshoot an issue where a user on my Telegram is having crackling noises using Pulse, and he didn't want to reinstall because it took him 2 hours to install the system. Because the way I set my Calamaris to install is to pull all the updates plus the packages he selected in Calamaris during the install. So
and this crackling noise is from the desktop audio output?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
so he didn't want to reinstall the system. So I was figuring out a way to create a script for him to replace one audio server with the other, but apparently it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of depends unless I use the RDD command instead of R for Pacman. Instead of R, it's RDD. So remove keep the dependencies in, but remove the file itself.
Right. Just remain. Yeah.
But if I do that, the system freezes after boot. So yeah, there's a lot of hooks in the system in the back end, and services in the back end that are getting broken in the process.
Well, I can tell you that this is a common problem with Pipewire. It's people that install it and then decide to uninstall it and then realize they broke things uninstalling it. That's if you Google it, you'll find a lot of people have had similar issues to that.
That's why I'm not going to put that script in. If they want to switch audio driver, reinstall the system. But the crackling noise, I saw that it was related to Pavu control, but it's not that. Because he installed Pavu.
Crackling noise may have tons of reasons. I've had this on machines people brought in that went high on network load. So the network basically interfered with the CPU, so the CPU wasn't able to handle real-time audio. That's quite common on laptops with Linux.
Okay.
So that's some kind of a power management issue.
Yeah, it could be interference.
Yeah, interference. I'm thinking that because he has a laptop and he said he's been having this issue with other distros.
Yeah, well, that's
hardware problem. That's a hardware issue then.
It's hardware.
This is audio is a giant problem anywhere. First of all, if he has any kind of power issues, so he should first of all try unplugging from cable from his system, see if on battery has same crackling. Because power.
Yeah, it could be electrical interference. Yeah, you could try
any
unplugging
kind of
it.
Interference.
Yeah.
Then second, the shielding around audio could have become loose. So then any kind of electricity will just mess with that audio, because audio chips require a crap ton of shielding to actually make them properly work. Well, then you have crackling. You have that's why in professional
audio is not
setups,
trivial.
They have special systems that remove any kind of imbalance from the audio equipment, and kind of
like all of the stuff I have plugged in. Like I have to be careful.
Yeah.
You know which outlets certain cords are run to, because if you get things too close to each other, the signal from one cable will interfere with the other. You'll get weird.
I have seen a computer and a just a basic audio setup. You have a mixing table, nothing else. The basically sliders, put in the same not the same outlet, but outlet that are on the same circuit. It basically made audio unusable. Just unplug the computer out, and audio was crystal clear.
The other thing he might check, since you mentioned a laptop, the speakers.
Yeah.
It's
not a hardware issue, because on MX Linux he doesn't have this issue.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought you'd said it was the same on other distros.
On other distros, but many.
But
other
not
distros.
MX.
Not MX. MX he's been having a great time, but.
Well, MX is based on Debian stable, so maybe.
Yeah. Maybe it's
a legacy audio driver.
Then that could be issue with audio hardware, the interaction between audio hardware and software.
Run a
program
check.
Drivers.
Yeah.
Could be a kernel thing. I mean, Debian stable's 510.
Could be that.
Could be a kernel.
Try a different kernel
problem.
Yeah.
What I have seen even some really well supported audio cards just not work on Linux. And you have to put them in different modes to actually work them, even on laptops. Now it is a bit of a hole in Linux audio.
Yeah, I'm just gonna recommend they reinstall the system in case they're having issues with audio, because there's it's a mishmash of dependencies here and there. I must admit, Linux has one Achilles heel. And I'm speaking frankly here, as
audio.
No. I'm not talking about audio, but in general, as a distro maintainer, I got to understand Linux better. Linux is when you install one thing, you cannot remove it and expect it to work and replace it with something else and expect it to work correctly. Everything is intertwined.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have been saying that for years now, and everybody's laughing at I'm crazy.
Yeah.
The whole system of
Well,
shared libraries, shared objects is properly called.
what you're running into with the Pipewire thing is when you had it installed and then you install desktop environments that now see you have Pipewire and see it as a dependency. This is the reason why distributions are so against having multiple init systems as an option. It's like systemd, that's it. We can't offer other init systems because you've run into that same problem. Now, everything depends on an init system, so it's going to see that init system as a dependency. You can't change it out, you know.
But that all comes from the fact that we Linux uses shared objects.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And people laugh at me when I said everything should be statically compiled or bring its own dependencies. People laugh at me. I'm crazy. That will be bloated. Okay.
I know
yes,
there's a debate.
file
There's a
flow.
debate in the Debian community about eventually offering a non-systemd init system as a offering.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, you're gonna have so many problems with that.
They
At least
will.
the Arch guys had balls. When systemd came around, Arch said, "We're switching to it, and we don't care." Like,
Smart.
you guys can leave that don't like systemd, right?
Smart.
Just stick with it.
2012, like quite fast after release of system.
Oh, I mean, you woke up one day, Arch was on systemd, and then people, we're mad, we're leaving. Okay,
Okay, leave.
bye.
They stuck to a horse, and that horse is de facto system on Linux. You
Yeah.
can't say it isn't.
Well, I like my units. If you have to do a lot with servers, you gotta
Yeah.
appreciate your units.
Well, I do a lot of server stuff, but in last 2 years I haven't written a single unit file. Thankfully, I
Yeah, well-
love my Docker.
Yeah,
Docker.
well, adding layers of more virtualization sometimes isn't the best
Well,
way to
technically, it
go.
isn't virtualization.
Sorry?
Containerization
Well,
is
Docker is not a
virtualization.
virtual machine. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, well-
containerization.
Running on a
Right.
native. It's running on a native Linux kernel on you. Actually, it's running directly on your machine, just as directly, if not more directly, than your desktop or your main server system, because it's running in a Linux namespace, just like your UI, just a different namespace.
Yeah.
And it is
I mean,
all
does it-
managed by C groups and your kernel. That's why it's there.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
your
yeah,
kernel.
yeah.
That's why containers aren't virtual machines. They aren't anything nice, anything close to that, because they are running directly on bare metal on a different Linux namespace. That's what's great about them.
Yeah, well, you still you gotta maintain some more underlying software in some
Well,
cases,
you need to maintain
and your images.
a runtime that controls that. Yes, but that's not a problem. That's what you need to do. Is basically you need to have a
Yeah, but
already
I mean, at the end of the day, is there that much
file.
difference between like a Docker container and a KVM?
Yes.
I mean, obviously there's a
Resource
difference, but
utilization is giant difference.
is it?
Yes, basically with a KVM virtual machine, you have to run a whole operating system, kernel and all.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Docker uses your kernel that's
Yeah,
already installed.
Oh, it's a much stripped down
It's
operating system that essentially what you're talking about.
you don't even need an operating system. You can have just the file required to run the program. For example, Go can run a single file, and that single file is already required in a container. And if you open it up, if you run it, it will run. No need for an operating system. You can have rootfs, like your system has a rootfs. You can have
Yeah.
that, so then you have all programs, all that, the whole shebang with apt package manager, whatever distro you're using. But you can go as far so lean that you can have one file, and it does everything because you don't need anything else. Because
One thing I would
running
briefly
on
want to
kernel.
mention, since you brought up containers, we just had somebody in the chat ask something that containers solves this problem. He says, why can't we have multiple versions of the same package or the same version of the same package multiple times on our systems? Containerized package formats. That's
why you
people
can't
often
have
ask me,
such
what's the
a-
point of things like app images and flat paks and snaps? Hey, you can have multiple versions of the same program installed, and it doesn't matter because they're all contained. So it doesn't matter about dependencies and things like that. You can't do that with your standard packages you're installing through your package manager.
I have an app image for Sayonara, which is sort of like Deadbeat. It's a music player, and I installed it over a year ago. I had the beta version, and it works beautifully. I downloaded the current version, and it doesn't work at all for me. You can't change the fonts, and the layout's different. So I'm sticking with the beta for over a year. I don't have to update to the current one. And that's one of the features of app images. You stick with that.
App images, the problem with app images, like DT said in his recent video, is the lack of a store front end, a stable store.
But they purposely designed it that way, but I do think it's a limitation.
It is a very big limitation. That's why Flatpaks are being pushed so hard, because they have the
Flatpaks had that exact same limitation, but they eventually changed their mind on that, because for a while FlatHub was not a thing. That's a kind of a new thing with Flatpaks. And before FlatHub came around, nobody used Flatpaks for that exact same reason. You couldn't find them. Right? Where's all the Flatpaks?
Flatpaks have the sandbox issue that often gets in the way, so developers often disable the sandboxes because it's a pain.
That's the one thing the Canonical guys got right, is when they created Snaps, having the Snap store. Yes, it's centralized. People want decentralization, but if you want people to be able to find your applications, it's nice having the one place to go.
But the problem is Snaps versus Flatpaks is Snaps take longer to load versus Flatpaks, and
the System D requirement also hurts, because not all distributions use System D. So
Flatpaks are not compressed. That's why they load instantly.
Yeah.
Absolutely no compression.
There's no compression.
And snaps have deferred the delay to the boot process. They do the mounting during the boot process. So if you have 40 snaps installed, you've got 50 plus mounts in your boot process.
It actually depends on many factors when it does. Most snaps actually decompress and mount during first runtime, but some do that during boot, depending on what they require. Then,
well, I installed three. I installed 3 of them the other day, and they all went through the boot. You either have 1, 2, or 3, depending on the design of the application. But they all went through the boot process.
Oh, okay. But the reason I prefer Flatpak, I don't use any. I just use Arch packages. But I prefer Flatpaks if I were to use one, like for example. OBS Studio. OBS Studio, if you run it as a Flatpak versus a Snap, it runs better than as a Snap.
Yeah.
That's debatable.
Well,
I haven't tried OBS as either one.
Especially since I know how Snap is made, I'm gonna say that's debatable. It runs a lot better. I know it does. I know it did. Now anymore, it's unmaintained. And
the only program I've tried in all 3 formats, because I use it all the time and it has problems every update, it seems. Kdenlive. I've tried in every file format known to man, including snaps, flatpaks, and app images. And for whatever reason, the app image of Kdenlive has always been the best of the 3.
Yeah.
I think Kdenlive, I think the actual developers package the app image, because it seems the most stable. So
the way I use Kdenlive app image and I use the app image installer application to put it in the applications folder, and I keep it updated that way.
A lot of it too is you want to find the package, like that the actual maintainers of that or the developers of that program actually packaged up. Because sometimes you'll get these community guys, well, Kdenlive's not available as a Flatpak, I'll create it. And sometimes they don't do a great job. They'll be...
Like same with Brave. Brave Flatpak is only available at on the S mode. What's it called? The developer mode. When you enable developer mode in the FlatHub, you won't find it as on the main hub.
That's problematic. That means they have something in there that either they don't want to publish it, or they have something in there that requires direct access to hardware, which shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah. You don't want
Shouldn't
it
be a
to be
thing,
able to
especially
break
for a
out of the container.
browser.
Yeah,
Please,
that's why they
that
keep
will break out.
that's why they keep it in the beta remote.
Yeah.
For now, every Chromium browser is not very stable as a Flatpak because they need access to things outside the container.
Yeah, that's for security reasons. Yeah, they don't want to allow those programs to escape. Basically,
I've read somewhere that Fedora has an automated process converting all their apps to Flatpaks. I don't know if they're going to implement it. I only heard it
Yes.
in one place.
Yeah, they did. They started actually. I had a friend of mine on Discord. I talked to him about the Fedora Silverblue,
Of course.
and Fedora Silverblue is only Flatpak
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
because of the immutable file system.
Yeah. Fedora
Same
Silverblue
like
is great.
yeah, it is. I would use it as a daily driver if I wasn't a maintainer of Zero Linux, but yeah, since I have to use my own distro
I'm
to
thinking
keep up
about
with the issues.
switching to it on my soon to be dead laptop until it dies.
Well, I love immutable file system, but the only
too.
caveat to this, you cannot customize it too much because after every system upgrade, it's gonna
Well,
wipe.
you can customize it all you want if you do correct things and save that as a image.
yeah, I thought because I enjoy playing with distributions like Geeks and Nix that are also immutable, and I would love to run one of those on my main production machine, but I'm so heavily invested in Arch. Like I've got so much stuff.
Same
Wait,
here.
I can't switch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, I mean, technology will come to Arch, I bet, within a year, because
Yeah,
it will
because
trickle
of the
down
Steam
from
Deck.
SteamOS.
Because
Right, because of the Steam Deck. Yeah.
Well,
We'll figure out that.
run Nix on Arch.
I could.
That's what I'm
Yeah, I
doing.
could.
I've got 360 applications now. I had 15 or 20 that either didn't install or installed with side effects, and I had to remove them. But of the 360, they're all working well. I update twice a month. I have about 30 every time I update, and everything's running smoothly. And so it's easy to install and easy to use. It just works.
Well, immutable file systems is specifically made. For example, if since I have a computer store and I wanted to introduce people to Linux, instead of installing any distro, mainline distro, I would install, like, for example, Fedora Silverblue. Why? Because the user will never be able to break the system.
Yeah.
So he will always say, "Oh, it's smooth, it's awesome, it never breaks. I tried, it never breaks." Well, why? Because it's immutable.
Right.
Yeah. So if I were to introduce people to Linux, the right thing to do is install any immutable file system based distro.
Yeah, because I mean, like you said, you can't break them. You can always roll back to a previous version. So it's not.
If he breaks
you're never going to be left without a working system, right?
Yeah. If they at some point manage to break it, they can bring the system back to me. I run the command to upgrade to a new image or roll back to an older image. Done. It takes me 2 minutes instead of half a day or a day.
Right.
With Nix, if you install an application, it has a rollback. So you install it, you test it, you work it. You don't like it, it has a rollback command. It will roll back to the previous system.
Those are the types of Linux systems that you have to install for users who want to get introduced to Linux. Not the rolling releases like Manjaro or Arch or anything like that, because those they will break them in 2 seconds. It's gonna take them basically take the computer home, run something wrong, break it, bring it back.
Oh, what's the Pamac that ships with Manjaro? Like I understand Manjaro's supposed to be for new users, but they probably shouldn't have Pamac and the AUR and Yay and all, because immediately.
That's confusing already.
Well, new users should not be playing around with things like the AUR unless they really.
I just read yesterday Ubuntu's going to a rolling release. They're having a rolling release version.
Oh.
Yes.
What?
Yes. Just yesterday came up with that.
Let me check. Let me check. I have all the news on my.
That can't be right.
It was in Hacker News.
Hacker News.
That can't be right because I would hear about that.
Yeah, I was about to say, my phone would be blowing up. Like I'd get emails about it.
I would know that before it came out through the news.
Yeah, because Ubuntu,
Let's see if I can find
being an enterprise distribution, like the last thing they probably want to do is be more rolling than they are.
Probably their 2 year. I think it was their 2-year release version that they're going to convert to a rolling release.
I know.
Yeah.
And they had a sequence of commands you would run to do it. So it was a detailed.
No. That's not an actual rolling release of Ubuntu. That's a community script.
Is that Martin Wimpress's script that he did a while back?
It's a rolling Rhino script, and
I think I did a video about that.
and
I tried that out in a VM on a video a long time ago.
Well, here's an article. Ubuntu finally switches to rolling release. I haven't read the article. I just brought it up.
I bet.
It's an unofficial flavor, not a switch.
Yeah.
Rolling Rhino remix.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's based on.
Yeah, because I mean, Ubuntu LTS is really designed for stability, for servers.
Yeah.
Like, why would you switch to a rolling release? Like, you're basically be killing yourself.
Yeah,
the reason for intermediate releases is basically to keep the momentum, nothing else.
Yeah, they're using clickbait there.
Yeah, because Ubuntu is losing a lot of its flair and a lot of its core users. Because
if you're talking about what we focus on, the desktop, maybe.
They're using the people like us.
Well,
core users remain. Core users for them, core users are corporate users. Those
they're trying to pitch Ubuntu
and even
to business, enterprise. They're not. Yeah.
Ubuntu is like
some fun things.
Linux, like Linux Experiment said in his video. Ubuntu is no longer as attractive as it used to be for users.
It's been heading that way for many years. A lot of people have had their head in the sand about it, but I've noticed, at least for the last 6, maybe 8 years, it has not been the same as far as the fervor and the community around it really thinking it's an awesome distribution. We love it. It doesn't have that same kind of flair it had back in the GNOME 2 and Compiz days, really after Unity came around. But even the early days of Unity, it was all right. But like I said, about 6-8 years ago, it's a noticeable change. And now, nobody really talks about Ubuntu as far as nobody's excited about it. Let me just say that.
Exactly. Fedora is the new Ubuntu.
Right.
That's when I dropped it. Was 6 years ago.
At least you're getting the latest version of GNOME there.
Yeah,
because I was telling people, 4 or 5 years ago that Arch is kind of like the new Ubuntu. People are excited about that, and a lot of people, especially Ubuntu users, didn't want to hear it, or they just didn't want to see it. I was like, look at because when did all the Arch-based distributions start appearing? About 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, really, I can remember the first Arch-based distribution I ever saw was Archbang. You guys remember Archbang? It's kind of like Crunchbang. It's based on Arch. It was an open box distribution. That thing came out like 7 or 8 years ago, and that was like the very first Arch-based distribution I'd ever seen. Now we've got like 200 of them. It's obvious things are different with Arch than they were a few years ago, and it's obvious that things are not the same with Ubuntu as a few years ago.
Yeah, but instead of saying Arch is a new Ubuntu, because Arch is a rolling release, not so much Fedora.
I'm talking about people being excited, as far as desktop users being excited and loving a distribution, being invested in a distribution, because Ubuntu had that at one time.
Yeah,
and now it doesn't seem.
Yeah, Manjaro in particular, I think.
Manjaro, yeah, people love Manjaro. A lot of the community around Manjaro really loves their distribution. Yeah, you're right.
I use Manjaro on my HTPC, but at some point I'm going to switch that system to Fedora, because the package, the Plex Media Server package on on Fedora's proprietary driver repository or proprietary stuff repository is better maintained. On the Manjaro side of things, now I cannot watch direct play. Like it's in the same house, different computers, same house. Now it forces me to transcode, and sometimes on 4K episodes of Boba Fett, it tells me your computer is not powerful enough to play that video. I'm like, it's a Core i7, dude. 32 gigs of RAM. What are you talking about? So I'm gonna switch to Fedora on that system. Very soon.
We have somebody in the Jack who was here earlier. Says, sorry, DT, you've been called. Something has been causing Jitsi to load forever for like 35 minutes. Yeah, that's weird.
That happened to me. I have multiple computer systems. The one I usually use, it did the same thing. I switched to a different computer and it's working on my other computer.
What I might suggest, or if you're using the desktop client, go grab the app image.
I'm using the app image, and it happened with the app
So
image.
that happens with the app image too?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's only on one machine. The other machine I'm on now works fine.
Because Jitsi's available in a bunch of different packaging formats, so if one's not working, maybe try another and see if it solves the problem, but I don't know. He mentions he installed a new GPU, so maybe that could be the issue. I don't know. I don't see what the GPU would... how that could be an issue with Jitsi.
Yeah.
Because Jitsi shouldn't...
It's just the RTC.
Well, Jitsi,
Right.
Jitsi is an Electron app, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
The other thing it might be, I had already installed Jitsi and run it, so it saved some settings somewhere. This machine was a new install, so it didn't have any previous Jitsi settings on it. So that might be part of the issue as well. There's some sort of bug in there.
Yeah, Jitsi is built on Electron, so...
But I think it saves some settings maybe in dot files or something and elsewhere maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never had an issue with Jitsi loading. Usually it just pops right up. So
Yeah.
Or use the browser. That's
there is a browser
fine.
version, yeah.
Yeah, but I had the browser version crap out on me, so I had to use the app image.
okay.
Remember Firefox and Chromium? I couldn't log in for a couple months.
I've never actually tried the browser version myself, so I can't speak to that.
I
I've
think
only used the desktop client.
Brave
and the
has
mobile
a
client.
built-in integration for Jitsi.
Yeah,
Brave
I'm
does have
Brave?
a built-in integration for Jitsi.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it works best with Brave. Natively.
not only, well, Brave natively, but there's an extension for that also in Vivaldi.
I just remember now that Murray mentioned Fedora, Firefox. For all of you Ubuntu users with 2204, Ubuntu is completely switching to Snap of Firefox.
The Snap. Yep.
And a lot of people will go mad for that, but I'm gonna tell you right now, it isn't Canonical's fault. If they didn't go to Snap of Firefox, they would have to switch to something else. By that I mean some other supported, not them forked browser, because they wouldn't support their own browser. I know they wouldn't.
Right.
So remember that. So think about which browser they would choose. Probably not Chromium, probably not Brave, and probably not Vivaldi. So there are two other options, really.
Well, Vivaldi's proprietary software said there's no way they would
They had.
do that.
Let's remember that what they would choose is probably a proprietary browser, just not the one that.
Well, I know where you're going. You're going to say Google Chrome would be it.
There are two options. I'm not gonna say which one.
Yeah,
they
well,
choose.
that's not Microsoft Edge. Come on, stop.
You could just go to the Firefox homepage and download
Yes.
the binary from there.
But I'm gonna tell you right now, if you're okay with using the long-term release of Firefox, use Firefox long-term, whatever it's called. I don't remember right now. Off the top of my head.
ESR.
ESR, PPA. It is maintained, and it is maintained by someone who who knows what he's doing, as far as I know. So should be quite
I don't know. It's
trusted.
is LibreWolf in the repos for Ubuntu?
I don't know, but you shouldn't be using that. If you want to use Firefox, go with the ECR.
I mean, I
That's
would
our
think,
version.
yeah, because LibreWolf has become like a very popular fork of Firefox.
That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, that's why I package it up and put it on my repo. It's not a bad. If somebody asks me what browser should I use that is like Firefox, I say LibreWolf.
Yeah, and LibreWolf is available in the AUR. It will eventually make its way into the main Arch repository. I think Brave was the same way. It was like the most popular AUR package. Eventually, they move these things over to the core repository. Brave is still an AUR package. Yeah. Yeah, Brave and LibreWolf still both available in the AUR. Yeah, they need to move those to the core repository.
I thought it's community. Brave.
Is it? Well,
you can check.
Are you on Arco? Because I know
Yes.
Arco, I think, packages Brave in their own repository. Yeah.
So do I. So do I. Because I moved away from Arco. Now it's on mine.
Oh.
I packaged 450 packages from Arco that Arco have on their repositories, and I added more on top of that.
I got it from Arco, yeah.
And when I say you guys on Arch, go grab LibreWolf or Brave from the AUR, you want LibreWolf-bin and Brave-bin.
Yeah.
Don't just go grab
that will compile for hours.
For all day.
Yeah.
Like you can start it in the morning, that night it will still be compiling.
I tried that with on Google Chromium. It took 4.5 hours and then failed.
You're lucky. Chromium on Gentoo, so that's actual Chromium, like full on.
Oh, with all the bloat, right?
Goes for, on a 4-core CPU, 8 threads, goes on for 12 hours. I don't know. Those guys who package those guys must have some big build servers. I know Google does for Chrome, but for everyone else, community people who build it, those guys must have big build servers to have some sort of.
All of you environmentalists that want to save the environment, stop Gentoo. Right?
Yes.
No, because it's even binary, you have to build it.
But you built them once.
Yeah, but it's once and then you distribute the binary. It's not everybody builds it.
That's like hopping on a train or driving individually.
No, everybody has to build their own train.
Yeah, oh, yeah, well, yeah. Everybody's actually building their own train. You're absolutely right. Yeah, you're right.
And yeah, lifeless web users in the chat says, isn't the AUR supposed to be something to avoid? Why would they not include that? The AUR is not, it's you need to be aware that it's a community repository that anybody can put anything in.
AUR
That's all,
is not supported by Arch people.
Yeah, it's not supported.
But if anything breaks because of AUR, you won't get any support.
Yeah, and you can't, like I mentioned early in the stream, like I've had to fix AUR packages that were broken. Like not my packages, other people's. Just understand, like if you find something in the AUR and you try to install it, it doesn't work. You can't go to the Arch and say, hey, this package is broken. Can you fix it? They don't care. Right? I mean, they'll care, but they're not going to,
You're not going to like the answer.
Yeah, that's like, hey, find the maintainer of that package, have him fix it, right? If you can find him.
Well, the nice thing about the AUR, a lot of the maintainers do reply, but it takes up to 24 to 48 hours sometimes.
And most of them in the package build themselves, if you read it, they'll usually, a responsible developer will give you a contact information, an email or something, or GitHub or GitLab. Hey, that maybe you can find them there.
Yeah, I mainly go to the GitLab or GitHub and post in the issues section. For example, recently I had an issue with PM6000, this NeoFetch style thing. It wasn't building. So I contacted the guy directly from GitHub. and he fixed it within 20 minutes. So now it's on my repository. So yeah.
And yeah, lifeless web user, wouldn't using sandbox executable browsers make it easier for your browser to be hacked? No, actually, it would probably be the opposite. Like
Opposite. First of
right,
all,
because,
I know a lot about sandboxing and containerization, so that's kind of my job. Basically, what would happen is even if they break the protections browsers have for JavaScript protections, WebAssembly sandbox, and all that, if they break that, they will just get into the sandbox, the container, the world, its own world, the browser's
Right.
world. And if they would need to actually break that
They-
world to get to your system, that's why you need. That's why it's good.
like
to
if
have
it wanted
both
to do something
separate worlds.
malicious, it could do something malicious to the container,
Yeah.
but it can't actually do something to your actual
Yeah.
main system, right?
Yeah.
It can only.
It-
So
it depends on the packager. If the packager
Yeah.
is intending malicious intent, it has a malicious intent, they would package malicious code in the container. But
right.
Yeah, and even then, if that container is properly implemented, the runtime is properly implemented, that container is its own world. So it
You
doesn't really
shouldn't rely
matter
on root.
what code is in that browser or is in that container.
Yeah.
It won't do anything to the host machine unless that uses some sort of bug to escape that container, or you give it root privileges. Then
And the other thing,
basically it's like you were running on a host. So
if you're
don't do
using
that.
one of the big browsers like Firefox or Chrome, they are focused so heavily on security.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't worry about my browser being hacked. Just stay up to date. It's kind of
That
like the
is
Linux
why-
kernel. You know, the Linux kernel is as soon as something is out there and you hear about some kind of exploit, the kernel
most of
team
the
has already
time-
patched it. So
Most of the time you will hear about a problem or vulnerability after it has already been patched,
yeah,
or
because
patches
they'll
in progress, because they actually tend to hide this information from users
right.
until it's been investigated and patches in work.
until it's not
There
a
is
problem anymore.
mailing list specifically for
Yeah.
for big
Delaying
distro
0
maintainers,
days.
security
Yeah.
people who talk among themselves about kernel problems.
Yeah.
It's a thing, and a lot of companies will publish the security problems after.
The one thing you have to
solve
worry
them.
about with browsers are the third-party plugins and
Yeah,
extensions,
that's the biggest
because
problem.
those are not officially made by Google or Mozilla, right? That's just you and me, kind of like the AUR, right? Anybody can make a browser extension. Don't just go install any browser extension. Same thing, don't go install anything from the AUR. If it's something you recognize, like a big thing like we talked about LibreWolf and Brave, that's fine. It's perfectly safe. You'll have no issues. But if it's Joe Bob's bash script packaged up in the AUR, don't run that thing unless you can actually read the script and know what it does before you do it.
Yeah.
I used to have trouble with Firefox add-ons. Some of them would have bad side effects, but not much anymore, not for years now. You stay away from the odd ones. They rate them in the number of downloads, so you can get a good idea of what's popular and used and probably safe.
Right.
But now it's a lot better than it used to be with Firefox.
Yeah, and you don't even really have to run these things in a container for that added layer of security. You could always run them with FireGel.
Yeah.
Or you could go full on craziness and just use CubesOS.
Oh, whoa. Speaking of CubesOS, a friend of mine tried to run it on a system with 128 gigs of RAM.
It was still slow.
Gigs of RAM.
That's too small. 128 gigs is too small for cubes.
For a normal user, it's so small, of course.
Well, when everything is literally
A VM.
a hypervisor, right? A VM, right? It's of course, because it's crazy.
Yeah.
I like the idea, like the concept of CubesOS is fine. It's just
Well,
the execution of it.
evolution on that are stuff like Fedora Silverblue, where everything is a container. Everything you run as a user is a container. It's a sandboxed where is a sandbox Flatpak. Of course, Flatpak have their own issues.
Yes.
I'm not gonna talk about them. The security
No,
issues.
no, but the main issue
But
with flatpak snaps and
Oh
the
yeah,
likes
I
is
get people that yell about the security of all three. Yeah.
not only the security, but the main issue I get on my servers is they won't use the system theme.
yeah. That's the biggest.
Like if you
problem.
really need a program up, because
Problem.
there have been situations where I really needed a program for something for some specific task, and it's only available as a snap or a flatpak or an app image, and I go get it. Oh, I don't like the icon theme that's in it.
Mhm.
Dude, does it run?
Yeah.
Like you needed it, right?
Welcome
Use it.
welcome to reality. You can have security and perfect
Yeah.
working between different.
Hey, the pixels are out of place on the app image compared to the Debian package. Whatever.
Well,
Yeah, like when I downloaded Kden Live Flatpak, I opened it up. It used the system theme because I was running it on KDE. But if
Right.
you download the Flatpak on something that's not Qt based,
Yeah.
it will not use the system theme.
Well, Kden Live, luckily, that particular application lets you set the theme within the
they're
application. So
Within the
it
application,
kind of solves that.
on non-Qt systems, but on Qt bases like KDE Plasma, it will use the variable that is in your home directory in the
Right.
X sessions or whatever.
With the security problems of Flatpak and all that, Snap has least security problems currently. There are some people who cry about what if you don't update the Snap.
Oh, yes.
That's not a problem because it is containerized.
Or why are
It's
the
its own
updates turned
world.
on automatically? Well, you can turn them off. I mean, people
They're
cry
turned
about
on
things.
so you don't have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And because most people forget about updating systems. Only we nerds do that.
Yes.
Second.
I install Linux on so many computers for friends and family, and they'll bring me that laptop back like 3-4 years later for something. And it's the same as the day I gave it to them.
Look, let's remember.
I know they've been getting that message in the sys tray. Hey, you have 400 updates available. Maybe you should have taken that update at some point in the last 3-4 years.
No, that's
Windows
listen.
has automatic updates, and I still see systems with years of updates available on Windows 10.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but
but that's the
I'm-
reality situation.
for example, I wonder why Arch doesn't have a system notification, a way to notify the user that in a better way than like on Arch, like for example, PAMAC on the custom distros. A better way to pop up something, tell them you have updates. Do you want to install? Yes, no. For
It's
example,
part
why
of the
don't they?
desktop, not part of Arch.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that would be that would vary depending on what desktop environment, or even if you wanted a desktop environment. How would they do that in the TTY if it was strictly a server? I mean,
Yeah, true. But I was thinking of implementing that myself in KDE, doing PAMAC and adding a hook that will.
Just use libAlpam to do it. It's a lot easier. That's official library for Arch.
I mean,
Linux package management.
on my desktop, you guys have probably seen the panel, Xmonet, Xmobar. I've got a little widget that tells me exactly how many updates are available.
Oh yeah, I use that on the XFCE edition.
Or that.
I use the same.
Yeah.
Works nice.
And all that is just I'm querying Pacman or maybe even one of the AUR helpers, and I'm asking it how many updates are available, and it just prints it out.
You're doing both actually. What this hooks up to? It hooks up to Pacman. And since Pacman supports both the Arch and the AUR, it will give you a total count of packages. It combines the AUR plus the Arch repositories, plus Arco, plus all the repositories you have at hand. I use that. I use that widget on Polybar.
That works as well.
Yeah, it's really neat, but it's very small. I got users with 4K monitors. They don't use scaling. They keep everything so tiny. and they tell me, I never got notified that there are updates. If you look at I told him, if you look at your panel, he looked at his panel, he had 380 updates.
I mean, that widget I have in my panel, all it is a little bash script.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple of lines. I could actually just put that like in the bash RC or X profile or Xinit RC. It's one of those scripts that gets automatically loaded. Actually, if you wanted it in a TTY, maybe just put it in a.
Put it in. Make it a system D.
I was about to exactly say the same thing, even though I was hesitant to say it. I was about to say a system D service
unit run by user, not a root daemon.
That way, as soon as you log in, it prints it out to the command line. Hey, you've got 200 updates,
and then you can add a sleep to it, and it can run every so often.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or
we're coming up at the end of 2 hours here, so let me get each of you guys to give us a last word. So take a minute and say something informative, insightful, entertaining. So Steve, you got any last words for us, sir?
Yes. When you use Arch, you are signing a contract between yourself and the system you're installing, any Arch-based distro, that you are ready to put up with the issues and learn how to fix them yourself. Don't expect from Arch anything but that. This is how Arch is. It allows you to learn, grow, become your own troubleshooting person. Do not expect Arch to fix your issues or to spoon food you anything. As distro maintainers, all of them will agree on that. We cannot solve your issues for you. We cannot own your hardware to test on. So learn how to troubleshoot your issues. And if you don't want to do that, by God, do not use Arch or any Arch-based distro.
Yeah, I can relate. Those that want to check out Zero Linux, that's Steve's distribution. I put the link in the chat again there. Let's get a last word from Big Pod. Big Pod.
Yeah.
Huh.
Something insightful.
Wow, you're quiet now, right? Now you've got nothing to say.
Let's see. Knowledge is power, and I know a lot.
Knowledge is power.
And there is an advice I have for everybody. It's actually two advice into one. Run immutable distributions and run everything in containers.
By the way, did you vote in the poll?
No.
You did not? But if you had to pick between those two, you only have the two choices. Python out of those two.
Don't be as crazy as me and make every desktop program a Docker file, like I do.
I don't think
pre-made.
I don't think there's any chance of any of us doing that, Big Pod. So I think you're good there. Stefan, give us a last word, sir.
Well, yeah, appreciated the informative talk in here. I just got 2 short pieces of advice, or actually it's 3. First is try to keep calm and stay relaxed. Second is try some gardening.
That's what I'm about to go do.
Put some flower pots on your window shelf whatsoever. Go to your garden. Have a bit of a look at green if you can. And the third piece of advice would be to eventually support your favorite creators about Linux content. Consider donating to your package maintainers or to people their software you use. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Appreciate that, Stefan. You must have knew that as soon as I get up from this chair, I've got to go mow my yard. So that's what I'm doing today.
Yeah, of course. You got to do that in the southern US.
Yeah. Yeah, things have already started to bloom. So there you
Cheers,
go.
guys.
I don't have to do it yet.
Cheers. Have a beer.
Well, after mowing the yard, it's probably a bad idea to do it before. It's going to be kind of warm today. Christopher, give us a last word, sir.
You're never too old to learn. I'm probably the oldest person in this whole group, and I thank you for letting me hang out. I've been trying Linux since Red Hat 3,
Nice.
but I'm not a. My memory has never been good due to ingesting so many substances when I was younger. So
Yeah.
I can't remember half of the stuff you guys remember. But thanks for having me. And
That was when the drugs were strong back then, back in the day.
yeah, yeah.
All right, appreciate you hanging out with us. Murray.
Okay, cat, tack, and T. There's one more. There's cat, tack, T, and P. P-E-E. For more
P.
P for more utils. It's like T, but it outputs to the terminal. So you can cat my file, type it to P space head space tail, and you get the first 10 lines of the file followed by the last 10 files in the file standard head. So I tend to use P a lot.
Yeah, I have never actually used any of the more
There's
utils.
some quite good. There's if any, if not empty. If you write a bash function and you want to get the input from standard in or from a environment variable, if any will tell you if there's something can standard in. So you can
Actually, looking at the more utils, the one I think I would find really useful, TS, timestamp.
Yeah, it's
Prints a
quite good.
timestamp.
Yeah, they're quite good. And it's fun as usual. I appreciate it, enjoyed a lot, and had fun. And thanks again.
Yeah, cool. And Commander Angry, I don't know. He's still here. Give us a last word.
Well, it's been entertaining as usual. Listening to the various bits and pieces of conversation. I had one one thing I was going to say is, as usual, I'm not paying attention, and the conversation went well beyond this. But the arrogance of package maintainers and kernel developers in particular, I have quite a bit of experience with that, and having dealt with that a number of times, I just thought it was really kind of funny. It's not just me. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. And then
There are some programs out there that I know their developers have a really bad reputation and a well-deserved reputation, because I've seen it personally with some.
yeah,
Not all. I mean, some communities are really good, but some not so much.
yeah. In particular, there's a couple of Red Hat developers that I've interacted with directly.
I wasn't going to name names, but
I will.
I'm going to let you.
I have no problem doing that.
Red Hat people are arrogant, yes.
Yeah, I've found that out firsthand. But sometimes you got to talk to them because they're the gatekeepers. So
Sadly, yes.
yep.
Yeah. And sometimes if they don't want to listen to you, there's nothing you can do.
Nope.
That's nothing, and you can't really. I guess you can get angry, but at the same time, there's no point.
No,
Really,
no,
because it won't change anything.
nope. Makes no difference. Makes no
Well,
difference. Even
thanks for hanging out.
I was saying, even having second level managers from large Fortune 500 companies start pushing back on their management, and they still just kind of give you the finger. You're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
that's that.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us.
Yep, thanks, guys.
And of course, I need to give my last word too, as well. I want to thank everybody hanging out with me on camera here. We had a couple of people that joined us and then had to drop off. And I want to thank everybody, of course, that's hanging out in the YouTube chat. We had some good chat going on in the YouTube chat. And of course, I want to thank the patrons that could not be with us here on screen. So I'm going to show some names on the screen here.
Where's Ben? I was wondering.
Ben was supposed to be here so he could talk about Storm OS, because I saw him last night on somebody else's stream. So Ben was supposed to be here, but I guess something came up. So That's unfortunate, but we'll catch him next time. He is usually here. Like, he's here for every single one of these. This is probably the first one I can think of in a while. I bet he hopped. I bet he hopped. It's a lot of times when Ben is having computer problems, that's when he's not here, because he hops like all the time on his laptop.
Yeah.
All right.
I just wanted to say that they're doing great work over there, over at the Storm team. As a Storm team, their distro is going really good. I tested it myself, and we collaborated. So yeah, so the guys over
Well,
there are amazing, and it's a distro to look out for.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised when I took a look at it. And Ben, obviously, he's heavily focused on XFCE as a desktop.
Yeah.
So I expected, being,
Well,
XFCE distribution, I expected him to knock that out of the park.
yeah, exactly. I was surprised, and they're pretty young as he's pretty young into the whole distro maintaining thing, but he's doing a great job at it. So I was pleasantly surprised. He hasn't been doing it long, and it's beautiful. It's way better than what I put out on my XFCE edition, which is dead, by the way. So don't expect a new release anytime soon. It's on Zero Linux from now on. It's only KDE, so don't expect any other DEs or WMs.
I'm going to link to StormOS in the chat. Other than that, let me go ahead and kill the stream, guys. So wave bye to YouTube.
Bye, everyone.